A simple question that leads the Newsweek website: is America ready for a black president?
In theory, yes. In practice, it's a toss-up.
When I listen to the debates over America's readiness for an African-American president in Barack Obama, for me, the question has always been, what does it matter that he's black? He sure seems like a nice guy. He's Harvard educated and speaks with an eloquence we can all admire. Then the question became, is he black enough? How can a black person not be black enough, I thought. What is blackness anyway? I looked into American history to try to find the source of our definition. In my research, I came across a curious form of entertainment called minstrelsy. Performed by white men in blackface, this peculiar ritual was many Americans' first glimpse at African American life, and quickly became the country's favorite form of entertainment in the 1840s. Spreading across the country on the growing railway system, this stage act seems to be the first time all of America had a shared image of African Americans, ingraining the stereotypes that we still hold to this day. It is my intention to understand the cultural context behind the minstrel craze, to understand where minstrel shows came from, why they became so popular, and try to trace its influence on American culture. When we understand where our stereotypes come from, hopefully it'll make them easier to avoid. In the years after the War of 1812, Americans started becoming vocal about their need for native forms and symbols that could assert the nation's cultural distinctiveness as clearly and emphatically as the war had reaffirmed its political independence. The war had made no changes in geography or political institutions, but it did serve to instill an even greater sense of pride in the national psyche. America was now a country that could stand on its own 2 feet, and had proven so on more than one occasion. At the same time, urban growth began to swell. Immigrants flooded the cities in torrents, searching for opportunity in the New World. But along with the European immigrants came rural migrants from the country's smaller settlements. On the cusp of the American Industrial Revolution, these rural migrants were also searching for greater opportunity in the big city. But the young republic was still struggling to find its voice artistically. American elites called for a cultural renaissance that would take European concepts to new heights. At the same time, though, a new segment of the population emerged, demanding that they have a say on the shaping of culture as well, heralding the age of the common man.
People want to see in entertainment parts of themselves. They want to see their culture. They want to see it explained to them. They want to have something in common with the entertainment. Half the population in the South, because in many counties 40%, maybe even more, of the population was black. Some of the African culture seeped into American psyches, whether they knew it or not. Some of the most sophisticated music in the world is African, and frankly, it's one of the few pieces of culture that the slaves could bring with them that couldn't be taken away because it existed in their heads. I mean, you can't ignore the fact that the White House is just being built, and it's being built by slaves. It's really being built in the South because Washington, D.C. is really at the very northern perimeter of the South. So it's clear they're wrestling with culture. They're wrestling with what is the relationship between white people and black people.
During these turbulent times, a new act started appearing on the stages of the big cities and underneath the tents of the traveling circuses.
People imitated black culture, painted their faces black, and began to create what people always create. That is, they take some parts of some music, some parts of some culture, and they blend them into something entirely new.
In 1832, Thomas Daddy Rice performed the Jim Crow in New York City, claiming he had learned the song and dance from a crippled slave in the South. The immediate success of Rice's performance set a new standard for blackface entertainment. In February of 1843, Dan Emmett, Billy Whitlock, Frank Pelham, and Frank Bauer came together to perform for the first time an entire evening of the oddities, peculiarities, eccentricities, and comicalities of that sable genus of humanity. Dubbing themselves the Virginia Minstrels, the four men codified the entertainment form which swept the nation almost overnight.
People were curious about the black population, and somebody gave them a nice little package, say, here's what they're like.
Spreading as quickly as the young nation that created it, minstrelsy by 1855 claimed 5 professional troupes in San Francisco alone. An entire evening's worth of entertainment, the new minstrel show consisted of 4 men seated in a semicircle performing songs, dancing, and joke-telling, all at the expense of the African Americans they claimed to portray. On one end sat the tambourine player, referred to as Mr. Tambo. At the other end was a bones player, often called Brudder Bones. Both endmen were the most buffoonish of the group, speaking an almost undeterminable supposed Negro dialect. In the middle sat the interlocutor, the only person on stage not in blackface. The interlocutor personified the dignity white men saw in themselves.
Mr. Interlocutor, sir, you have a brand new coat on while you're looking the picture of health this evening, sir.
Well, you look like you might be out for an evening on the town yourself.
Oh, no, sir. I'm in mourning. You see, my dear old brother died last night.
Oh, poor fellow. Well, what did he die of?
He died of sinus trouble.
Sinus. No, the medical term is sinus.
Oh, no, sir. He died of sinus trouble. You see, we was stepping out of a coach last night with another fella's wife when he seen us.
Before the Civil War, these acts were almost always set on southern plantations. Entire troops would dress in ragged slave clothing and mimic their perception of typical slave life. Minstrelsy lasted roughly 50 years as America's favorite form of entertainment, but as the controversy of the African Americans' role in society subsided, so did minstrels' popularity. But many ideas of how African Americans were supposed to act remain, creating the stereotypes that we still see today.
Then lay down the shovel and the hoe, and hang up the fiddle and the bow. No more hard work for poor Ned. He's gone where the good doctors go.
Well, what is a black accent? Well, people thought they knew. How do black people talk? People thought they knew.
Now you see, Andy, first the atom splits into what they call a monocle. And then the monocle busts and breaks down into what they call neutron, proton, fig newtons, and morons.
If marriages are made in heaven, my guardian angel has sure been loafing on the job.
When I look at television today, you know, the MTVs and the BET and different Comic View and those type of shows that are out there, I mean, we still, even today, see the same negative stereotype of African Americans.
Utterly racist on the surface, minstrelsy seems only to reinforce racial stereotypes that followed us through history, all the way up till today. But perhaps this gross ritual was the first glimpse at American culture that has always been enamored with African culture. This pattern of white musicians mimicking black music is a trend that would only continue through different eras of music.
And that was the beginning of a long relationship between blacks and whites and black entertainment and white appropriation of it, and this strange dance that we've been doing with each other since really the beginning of our relationship in America. It's too close, it's too deep a story. So you have to degrade the relationship. You have to do degrading things so that you can live with the tremendous affront to humanity that slavery was.
As I look at culture and as I see how people are trying to define themselves, it is interesting to see how culture, how music, how theater tells us what we are and then asks us what we could be. Sometimes I think people say things in music or say things in theater, and they're really poignant questions. They're really things that need to be asked, and we're afraid to say them out loud, but we will say them sometimes in music.
Minstrelsy attempted to portray the lives of slaves through mostly English-style songs and a broken representation of the language of the day. I think that the inaccuracy of the portrayals of African Americans says a lot about culture. It's something that cannot be recreated or mimicked. And only when we realize that we're all essentially American can we overcome the boundaries of color that have so long divided us.